people wherever they go. And that's how do we do this? And like Christine said, what are they think about the other person? And they're not going to have a T-shirt, hopefully, when they're at work. We're not getting along. Let's get in the T-shirt together. That would be awkward.
And there's a couple times I know that the kids would bicker with Marcy, but if I stepped in, it did not take much of more than just a look, and they're like, "Oh boy, I've crossed Dad." And there's something about that. I don't know what it is, but that dad dynamic with the kids, it helps. So encourage your husbands, or if you're a couple of guys in here, we have some authority just by being a dad that our kids really respect. We can nip that off a little easier than mom can from time to time.
I'm so thankful you have Troy up here because dads have no idea how their value in homeschooling. My husband travels a lot, so I was home with my kids a lot. But when he was home, he had a home office and he was home. And if he heard my kids talk to me in any kind of disrespectful, he would step in and stop it. And I encourage you as moms, if you're having troubles, just have arrange for your spouse to be there when you're homeschooling for a little bit. And my husband would just step in and say, that's not how you talk to your mom. And they knew right away. Dad, I'm the disciplinarian, he's the fun guy. But when Dad says no, they would listen. And, I know we have moms and dads that are single and homeschooling also. And we love to come alongside them and say, hey, can I have the opportunity to help edify you and to help you in teaching? And so I can tell your children how they should treat their mom. And some of that third party effect is really, really valuable. It's so valuable in your teaching all along the way. So anyway, I just really value that you had a guys panel and everything. I do have a husband that's very involved in homeschooling, and he teases because I say, I have 5 children and 2 son-in-laws. He goes, they're my kids too. I said, yes, you have great value. Thank you, because I couldn't homeschool without you.
Do any of you have tips on homeschooling an only child?
I don't have a only child, but I have only one at home right now, and we were talking about that at the table. It's really hard when you get to your last one and everybody is gone and moves away, and they look at you with tears in their eyes and say, why does everybody have to move away? It's very lonely and it's really hard. I have a good friend a good friend that has only one child and student that I teach, and I think it's really valuable to get them around friends and teach with friends and do a lot of different activities and things like that. They do get your undivided attention, but once again, I work really hard with my son that, life isn't all about you. We have a family unit, and you are part of a larger unit. And so even if it's just one child, there's still a mom and a dad and a child. And one thing we teach in our family is if you have a stool and one of the legs is broke, whether it's a 3-legged stool or a 4-legged stool or a 5-legged stool, if one of those legs is broke, the family unit is not working like it should. So even though we have one son that we're still teaching, if he doesn't do the dishwasher and he's complaining about all the dishes, I said, I'm sorry, but you didn't pull your own weight. And so today, you're not only going to unload the dishwasher, you're going to load it, because you have value in this family and you are very much needed. And so just to encourage them and help them understand who they are. And along with that is just, I think it's important to praise your kids for what they're doing that is well. I tend to be a disciplinarian, and it's important to praise them where they're really gifted and where they are doing well, rather they have learning disabilities or struggles or whatever it is. Just praise them where they are, but I can't speak a lot into that single child one other than just the youngest.
I just have one more point to add. It's from seeing what happens with other moms who have a one-child situation, or where they have a really tight relationship. In these cases, it's mom and a daughter. And it became, in those situations as time went on, a codependent relationship where the mom would become so dependent on that relationship with her child, with her daughter, had a hard time launching down the road. And I don't know the answer to it, but just to be self-aware, to know that as you're going to have a great relationship, a friendship with that daughter or that child, and how to maintain the parent-child relationship rather than the best friend relationship, so that you can continue to help them develop into someone that can launch on their own and hopefully get married and have their own family, rather than being so codependent on the parent in that situation, be each other best friends. That comes to mind as something to consider. As it'd be hard. I can't imagine being in that situation or just having one person and then you're launching them, but finding ways of helping them do that.
Just forgot my question. What happens? Give me a second. Did you ever have or worry about not spending enough time individually with each child?
We found that if one of our kids starts acting out, it usually means that they need that one-on-one time, and then we try to, either my husband or I, take them to town, do a little date night, or even just grocery shopping and spend time talking one-on-one with that kid.
Right, with 5 kids, it seems like it's easier for 5. I know some families that have 10 or more children, it's like, man, I have it so much easier than they do to be able to get some individual time. We get little snippets through the years, and the nice thing about Minnesota is there's 40 hours of driving. That you wouldn't. So for all of my oldest 3 children, and now my 4th is starting to drive now. We have a lot of drive time, just me and them, and so that's been good. And then also it's taking advantage of whatever little moments come into life in which you find yourself one-on-one. It's like, at that time, do I pull out my phone and start doing my own thing? Or can I engage enough, recognize, hey, this is the time, this is the moment in which it's the 2 of us, and we can have some one-on-one, what's going on in your world conversations. And sometimes I've done well, and other times not so much. And so that's, can I be aware enough to step in those moments, because they'll happen. At least for us, we only have 5. So if you have way more than 5 kids, then maybe be more deliberate.
We have that windshield time. Windshield time is really great with boys. Anybody that has boys are not face-to-face conversation like females. They're shoulder-to-shoulder conversation in the car. They don't like to look at you in the eye typically until they're older, and then they may do more face-to-face. So car time is really, really valuable. So I always like to have one of them in the front seat so we can visit and just ask a lot of questions. Even if there's other kids in the car, maybe you put them with a movie and you're having conversation with them. Or for me, it was just being more present. I'm one of those that, I always have dishes, I always have laundry, I always have paperwork, I do a lot of different things. So I always have other things to do. So it's really hard for me to sit still. I'm not known for sitting still. And recently I was speaking to my adult son, and I'm sitting there going, I have to go somewhere, and I have to have this done and this done and this done before I go. And he's like pouring his life out to me. And the Lord goes, your 21-year-old son is sitting in front of you and wants your input. And what do you have to do that's more important? And I don't know if any of you ever have those arguments with the Lord, and you're like, be where your feet are. Yep, I'm just going to sit here, and who cares what else needs to be done or what I'm late for. But my 21-year-old son is asking me life questions. And one of the questions he asked is, hey, Mom, do you want a road trip with me to North Carolina? Yes. Yes. When your kids ask you to do things like that, you like move heaven and earth to jump in with both feet. So when they do want to talk to you, you want to give them your full attention. And it may be putting math aside or science aside or whatever else. In our family, I realized really quick that homeschooling was way more than reading, writing, and arithmetic. It was sitting around the table during the election season and talking about the topics and why the abortion topic is important and why all of these different things that they're being bombarded with and why that has value, or asking them, what do you think about that? I like to ask my daughter, like, how was youth group tonight and what did you talk about? I'm pretty tired. I don't sleep a lot. I'm pretty tired. I'd crawl in bed with her and she would just talk and talk and talk. And then when I fell asleep, she would shake me and tell me to get out of bed. But meet them where they're at. Ask them, how did it go on the bus coming home from the game? That's kind of, if your kids are in any kind of outside activities, which most all of our kids are, some kind of outside activity, like what was the conversation? How did you respond to that? And talk about it. You want to be part of their life, so.
Yeah, I got a few ideas from you guys and remembered when they were little, and even through all the ages, it's not, you don't always have time to take them to town. Sometimes you actually want to go by yourself. so that's like, bye guys. But I think taking the little ones out to put clothes on the line, or to feed the dog with you, or even 15 minutes with any little one, doing those little things, or they get a little older and then taking them, grocery shopping with you, just one-on-one. We did that. But teenagers love to talk. You'll find this out if you don't. They love to talk late at night. So you'll find this out even when they're like, I don't know, 15 to 25. I'm saying. And as I would lay in bed and they would come to my room, I'm like, here they come. And I'm just settled in, like, where's my favorite place to be as a homeschool mom? A lot of times it was in my own bed, on my pillow, ready to go to sleep and shut my brain off. But they would come home from youth group or from wherever, being out with friends, and they would talk to me for half an hour, and then an hour, and sometimes an hour and a half. And I would just go, I'm going to be so tired. Like, I am not going to function. I'm not going to function. I'm going to be really crabby. But they're old, so I didn't need to do a lot in homeschooling that time the next day. So I just learned, like, that's when they talk to you. So you have to just reframe your mind and just listen. And yeah, for that late night, you probably know too, like those late nights are when they love to talk. And that's, I don't know, mine didn't talk as much during the day as when it was like 10 p.m. to 11. And so I would just encourage you, like, when they start doing it, just like, okay, the next, settle in and listen. And even now, if anyone is, up late and there's, we have a 19-year-old, so, but if she comes to talk, and I'm not used to it as much anymore because she's away, but like, okay, here goes, like, she's talking, and it's deep conversations at night. So yeah, that's kind of a cool thing. And I think when you homeschool, I know when you homeschool, you're definitely closer to your kids, because you're with them all day long, and you get like all those hours, and you get to know them, like all those hours that normally you would have a teacher being with them. So by the time they're in high school, they're talking to you about a lot of stuff and actually asking your input, which is a really great deal. So yeah.
I just want to add to that really quick that is an encouragement for some of you that with young kids that you're just really in the trenches and wondering if you'll ever survive. One of the most beautiful things is when your kids grow up and they call you and say, hey, Mom, do you have a few minutes? It doesn't matter what you're doing, you have a few minutes because they're processing life with you. And I think when you homeschool, one of the most beautiful things is that they do come back and want your input about major life decisions. And that means that maybe you did something right. I tease my kids that I'll pay for their first 2 years of therapy because they were homeschooled by me. After that, they're on their own, and they just roll their eyes and laugh at me. And so it's kind of a joke in our family. But honestly, that was one of the greatest rewards. And along that, I had a friend one time whose kids went to college the same time mine did. And she goes, do you ever hear from your kids? And I go, well, what do you mean? She goes, well, my son only, like him, I might get a text a week. And I went, oh, I am really blessed. because they do communicate, because we live so much life together.
You guys have all had these conversations like, Mom, do you remember when the dog, and they just go on and on and on. You know what I'm talking about. But one thing that I try to hold on to is listen to them with the little things, because then they'll come to you with the big things. And so it's important in those young years, even if they're talking about their Lego tower, like, I don't care, I don't have time for this, but, take the time to listen.
We used to say, listen with your eyes. So I have 3 ADHD kids and realized I'm ADHD. My daughter informed me of that really with not a lot of grace. And so I would say, Eli, give me your eyes, because he couldn't really hear what I said, I didn't think, which he could. That was a kid that we took the chair away when they were doing math because he needed to dance to focus on math. So I'd say, give me your eyes. And so then he learned when Mom wasn't looking at him that I must not be listening either. So one time he took his little hands and goes, Mom, give me your eyes. And I was like, okay, I need to practice what I preach. So sometimes we learn from our kids. Most of the time we do.
Did you ever have a time where you wanted to put them on the bus that went by your house? And what did you do?
Do I have to talk about this? Yeah, I did, and I threatened. No, I don't know if it was a good thing, but I threatened one time. I can call right now, and you could go tomorrow. That wouldn't happen. That was a lie. So I would say that I wouldn't do that now if I was a homeschool mom. But yeah, that was when I was younger. It was really hard. Like, it was a hard thing. And yeah, for sure. Sometimes I thought they could just all be there. I would be sitting doing my own thing. I would have a job. I would have more money. We'd have more things. We would have a nicer car. But now they talk to me, at 11 o'clock at night. Still, the other night, my daughter was like, okay, I'll let you go to sleep. And then she said something again, and I'm like, it's okay. I say, it's okay. Then by the time I was like, had my eyes closed, and then I'm like snuggling into my covers. But I mean, they talk to me, and they have good values, and they all want to homeschool. So yeah, I wanted to send them sometimes, but no.
Well, I did threaten them, and I don't recommend that. But I did one day say, well, first of all, when my daughter hit high school, we struggled to know if we should put her in high school or not. And I asked her and my husband to pray about it. I knew where I kind of settled, but I wanted it to be a team effort. So they prayed about it, and they both said, yeah, I think we want to continue homeschooling. And I sat down to do devotions in my chair by the window my first day, and the yellow bus went by my house taking kids to school. And I went, oh my gosh, I got to call Donna. I got to talk to Donna about if I'm making the right decision. And I heard the Lord say, how about you call me? And so I was like, oh, okay. And so I settled in and I prayed and I said, Lord, why did you put me in this position? I'm fully not qualified. And he said, you know I am. And so we settled in and we homeschooled and we continued. And incredible blessings that came out of that. And that was my oldest daughter. Then we got to my oldest son. And he come to me the day before school started and said, I'm talking to my buddies at football, and they all think I should homeschool or that I should go to public school. So I'd like to sign up for public school. And I go, it starts tomorrow. And he said, yeah, I'd like to go public school. And I said, well, it can't happen by tomorrow, but let's talk about this. And so we talked about it, and the reasons he wanted to go weren't really of value. But yes, I have those. So he ended up staying home. And not only did he stay home, but one of his buddies that had gone back to public school after homeschooling came around his junior year and told his mom, I don't want anything to do with public school anymore. I want to be homeschooled like Peyton. And so it's kind of funny how God handles things, but you got to know why you're doing it and what you're doing it for, because it's hard. It's really hard, and not all the moments are beautiful. Like, we're seeing some of the beautiful things now, or conversations with our kids. But I'm telling you, there are days that I'm like, I'm done. I'm taking you to the school right now and enrolling you, and they're like, no, and that's not really the best way to homeschool, is with your emotion. Just side note. But one day I did wake them up when they would be getting on the bus, and we did a regular public school day from 7:30 a.m. when they're getting on the bus. And then we had recess and we had lunch, and then we got on the bus. And I think that the morning, making them sit in the same chair for about half an hour, they could do whatever they wanted, but they couldn't get up from that chair. We didn't have to revisit that at the end of the day when they got home at 4:30. And my kids are like, what do they do there all day? And I'm like, that's a really good question. I said, well, you're in a classroom with a lot of other kids that are asking a lot of questions, so I'm able to answer your questions, but that teacher has to answer 20 questions. And they realized maybe it wasn't so bad to homeschool. I don't know.
I had a day a few years ago. It was a bad day. You've all had that. No, I remember this one because I saw that yellow school bus drive by, and I just started bawling. And if you think you are the only homeschool mom that locks herself away and cries, you are not alone. We all do it. But I called my sister, and we had a good talk. But I think the most important thing that came out of that is just to have somebody that you can reach out to, that you can call when you're having a rough day.
I can just bring the husband's perspective in this. I catch the stories when I come home. And there's a couple phrases that come by. I don't know how often Marcy was thinking about sending him on the bus, but one of the phrases that I heard quite often was, I brought you into this world, and I can take you out of it. That one was there. And then the second one was, I want to squish your face. And that was another one that came up from time to time. I don't know if I got the influx quite right. But tough times. What you're doing is so challenging because it's going to stretch every part of you, and there's so many obstacles and voices that are going to tell you again and again and again that this isn't worth it, that you need to treat yourself with more respect than this. But I think what Beth's talking about here as well is finding the support and the encouragement. That's what this is about. And then also try to find what are ways that you can take care of yourself, even those little snippets during the day. So hard. And maybe us husbands, we can come alongside. One thing that comes to mind, it was mentioned earlier, husbands in the room and also wives. If you have a specific easy meal list that you don't want to spend it on yourself, but if your husband brought home hash browns and beef and French fries that is quick and easy in the oven, make a note of that, make a list, and let your husbands know what those are, and he can help out with some of those things. Find the little things in life that can just help you get through the next day, because this is challenging. All the moms are going through it, and us dads will try to help out and support and come alongside as we can. Very normal, but it's draining. It's hard, but it's so good. It's so worth it.
We'll open it up to questions from the floor.
Could I just elaborate on the one-child homeschooling? I have two children. They're 20 years apart, so I've homeschooled two only children. My first child was a great child to be an only child. He married a homeschool girl who was a family of 6, who wanted to have many children. My child loved being an only child. The benefit of homeschooling an only child is you have an only child. You can go places. You can go to Washington, D.C. and buy 2 airline tickets, instead of 7. So it was always different for us because all of our friends, I didn't know anybody who had less than 4 children. Nobody who homeschooled had less than 4 children when I had Michael. His best friend was the oldest of 10, and that was who we rolled with, and they loved us. I think there was a lot of judgment that came upon us because we didn't have 10 children, and they didn't know our story. We couldn't have 10 children. Or maybe we didn't want 10 children, but we couldn't have 10 children. We had 1, and the Lord blessed us with another one 20 years later. So homeschooling is lonely. So reach out to your families that have an only child. It's lonely. You have no one to talk to. You have no one to talk about the book with that they just read, except their mom. And thankful for Audible now. They didn't have Audible when I homeschooled my almost 30-year-old son. So Dad couldn't listen to the book on the way to work or be a part of the listening of the book. So reach out to your families that you know that have only children that homeschool. And they're not weird. And that's just important because it is really lonely. And I've just noticed the difference. Like I said, my first child, he loved it. My daughter-in-law wanted to have many children. He's like, they had 1. He was like, 1 and done. And she's like, please, we have more, 2 and through. They're on 2 and through now. So I have 2 grandchildren. It's the most kids I've ever had. She's like, how do you know what it's like? You only ever had 1. I'm like, okay. But having a child now that I have, he is very lonely. He desires to be like his friends that have, other homeschool kids. So we are involved in classical conversations. We're involved in any co-ops we can get involved in, just so we have that opportunity for him to participate and do school with other kids and be able to get that, which is a really important time. But just reach out to them because those kids, it's tough. So that's my 2 cents on that. Because I do have an older one.
Thank you.
We're a no tablet family in our house, but with winter coming up and I have 2 really little kids, we're considering getting tablets with some learning apps. Do you guys have recommendations for apps, or do you recommend not getting tablets at all, introducing that in your home? I guess what are your thoughts on tablets and learning games and such? It wouldn't be like we wouldn't get them, movies and Netflix and stuff, but.
Can I ask how old your children are? 6 and 5.
My husband and I don't agree on this. That makes it really hard. It makes it really hard. He was just standing in the back. He just left. I wish we had nothing. I really do. Kids can play. Think about when we were little. We didn't have all that kind of stuff, and we didn't miss anything. I think now with all these screens, kids are missing more than when we were little, That's my 2 cents.
I see us guys, we were talking about purity online, and I know when we're talking about apps for teaching, long way away from impurity, but once you're on devices, it adds a whole nother world of conversations about what's pure and what's not, the safeguards that need to be put in place to protect, because the world is out there trying as hard as they can to get into our families and sabotage all the work that we're putting into it. And so I'm not going to make a blanket statement. It is a sin to use these apps and use your devices, but it adds another layer of opportunity for the enemy to get in our homes and try to wreck what's God's doing. And the second, what Beth's saying as well, we are seeing already that what happens with devices, there is dopamine that's released in the brain. It's a addictive chemical that's released as you use devices, and those programs are designed in such a way to create an addiction. And so we have to, if you're going to use those devices, make sure you set up time where it's limited, and you have other outlets they have with friends and exercise that also release dopamine, so that their main source of your good feeling hormones that God created in our bodies isn't coming from that device, from that screen. We're seeing kids with some developmental delays, and then also relational delays as they've become dependent on those devices. I can't make a blanket statement saying it's a sin, but we see so many negative side effects already from that it's highly cautioned to dive into the realm of apps, and especially when they're so young. So many good things on there, but there's also so much opportunity for problems down the road. So that's what I see.
And I think one thing to do is to think ahead and prepare yourself. Like, we're going to the doctor's office. Instead of bringing all the tablets and have them lined up in all their chairs, bring books or bring an activity or something that can replace that can fill their time.
If they don't have, in this case, if they don't have a tablet, I wouldn't get each one of them a tablet at all. I have a kid that uses like an iPad more than what the other kids did, because that wasn't an opportunity. And so I definitely can understand how easy it is to be addicted to it, but I wouldn't give them, like if you have an iPad that you use for school, then I would only use it for school. It stays in your possession and they don't play any other games on it. It's only an educational iPad. I would not let it be a gaming device at all. There's a lot of dangers in that. And I fully support what Troy is saying. So there are some great, like multiplication. They try to beat their multiplication scores or spelling or different things like that we've been able to do. But it's pretty easy to get addicted to that. But I would have it be one of those things that's in your possession at all time and you don't readily give it to them. I've sometimes just put it on my phone, they can play multiplication game on my phone, but it's my phone and you don't use my phone unless you have permissions. But anybody else in the room have problems with electronics with some of their kids? Can be a major issue. Yes.
My three youngest are in first, second, and third in public school, and they use the iPads a lot. I think it's to keep them busy while the teacher's working with small groups. But when they've been on their iPads for the day, and at night we ask them what they're doing, it's like, oh, I was playing games. Oh, I was playing games. And that's all they'll talk about. But if they don't have an iPad game, they'll talk about what they did in math or what book they read or something like that. So I think, I agree with the addictiveness of the iPads. They're trying to focus us in so we buy more games from that same company. And I think it really has to be used with caution. There's a lot of other tools that can get the same results that aren't as addictive, and they're healthier. So that's where I stand.
I was also going to say, if you are considering getting an electronic device, a lot of people choose to put parental controls on, but keep in mind that is someone's opinion based on an age range, and that's constantly changing. I don't think there's anything that can cover what your opinion of your limitations are for your own children.
I had a fear that if they weren't on, I got weird fears. If they didn't learn how to navigate and use the computer, you know, how were they going to, or internet or whatever? Did you like, because there's some who don't do any computer and then hand.
I wanted to comment on that because I helped raise my nephew that went to Waldorf school, and they don't learn on computers until 7th and 8th grade. And the reason is because they're using their imagination the whole time. And it's the higher tech, like the CEOs of these bigger companies, they actually bring their kids and have them go to that school because they don't want them on computers because they know it's wrecking their imagination. So, I mean, it's kind of something to think of.
Use great caution. Yeah. Computers are great for typing. My 7th grader just started a typing course, and there's free typing courses online, and I can't remember the one offhand that we use, but it's fabulous. Like, he wants to get better at it, and I'm expecting him to do like 5 lessons, and he's like, Mom, I did 20 lessons, but I'm really struggling with the K or whatever. So in that case, like for typing, that's great. But once again, like you said, 7th and 8th grade kind of thing. There is a documentary out on how the whole goal is to program all of these different social medias and everything is to program you to want more and more and more and more and more and to control your time. And our kids don't have that self-regulation. A lot of adults don't have that self-regulation. So just to be aware of it, and our kids are watching us. If we're on our phone and they want to talk to us, we got a problem. And we have to be the example of that. Kathy Cook has a really great story. I know she's been mentioned a couple times today, and I just wanted to throw out there that How Smart Am I is a book that she has. It's not a matter, she talks about the different intelligences. It's not if your kid is smart, but how smart am I, how smart am I? The different types, if you're hands-on learning or all the different ones. Excellent, excellent book. But she talks about walking out, and she very much supports homeschooling. Love it. It's K-O-C-H, Cook. She talks about walking out of a restaurant one time and noticing at the center of the table was all these phones stacked up. And she stopped and asked the family, she said, what's the deal with all the phones in the middle of the table? And the dad said, well, we come out to dinner as a family, and so we're going to have family time. And so the phones are stacked in the middle of the table, and the first person to grab their phone buys dinner. And she said, there's like 8 people at the table. And he said, and if nobody grabs their phone, I'll buy dinner. And she just really commended him for that. And even though we have adult kids, we asked them to be present in the conversation. And our kids actually complained about going over to friends' house, and they were invited to do sleepovers, and their friends were on their phones the whole time. And they just said, it's so rude and disrespectful, and it's so discouraging that we got invited over and our friends are on their phones. So even when you allow your kid to have a phone is huge. My 7th grader doesn't have a phone. Sometimes he'll use his dad's work phone or whatever, but when he's in public school sports, we get a text from the coaches when the bus is going to be there. So, you know, of course he still fights for a phone, but we just kind of giggle and say, you'll get one eventually.
Yeah, Heidi asked that question, though. You're going to feel like you're missing out. Your kids all the friends and everything in the world, they all have these devices as young as possible. And that's where us as homeschoolers can set a different example for our families. We don't abide by the world system. We have our own system. We have our own values in our family. And for us, for this generation's, it's phones. We're teaching our kids, hey, we don't have to follow the world system. We set up our own system to fulfill the values that are important in our family. Do that for your kids someday. Do it for my grandkids. And so then we don't know what it's going to be for their generation. It could be phones. It could be something entirely different that we're not thinking of. But if they recognize that our family system that we have in our family and our church and the values we have important to us, that we don't have to go along with the world, and the world doesn't get to dictate to us how we fulfill our vision, and they can then take that resolve into their own parenting someday to whatever issues they face in the future. They'll have a good example from us that we do things a little different. And once they get to adulthood, and if they need computers and software and all of that for their jobs, you can learn it. And they'll learn that on their own specifically for their work. I don't know anyone who says, oh, I wish I would have had devices earlier on in my life. I'm on the computer all the time as an adult. I'm glad that I didn't have them as a kid. So I at least had some time when I could be able to play.
There is a catchphrase we use, this is how our family does it. How those families do it is their choice. This is how our family does it. And our family isn't going to do that. And they may grumble and such about that, but eventually they may appreciate it. I had 2 kids in 1 week text me and say, thank you, Mom, for making us do the hard things. There's a book out, Doing the Hard Things, which is a recommended reading for our teenagers, and or required reading in their literature. And teaching them to do the hard things, teaching them how when life gets hard to dig your heels in and press in instead of run away, because life is hard. When they get out on their own, life slaps them. We teach them in our homes, you can do anything you set your mind to, we believe in you, everything else. But we also have to prepare them. When you get out on your own, it's really hard. They come back and go, Mom, I don't want to adult anymore. This isn't any fun. This adulting, we don't like it. But I had 2 kids in 1 week say, thanks for teaching me how to do the hard things. I had a really hard week, and I remembered how you taught us to press in and how when life gets tough, the tough gets going. And that got me through this week, and I appreciate that. Or they'd get to college and have friends that would just like unravel because they didn't know how to deal with stress in life. And so what you're teaching them at home is life skills. You're teaching them so much more than reading, writing, and arithmetic. And there's so much value that you're teaching them. Are you doing it perfect? No. None of us are perfect. But you know what? I don't know any perfect public school teachers either. And I know public school teachers and coaches that are asking us, how do we get more homeschool kids on our teams? They're some of the hardest workers, or they're the most respectful, or whatever. And we work really hard to bridge that gap. It's not us and them. I encourage you, don't make it about us and them. Because we have family and friends that are in the public school, and they're struggling too, and we're struggling, and we're parents when we're all in it together. But it's not an us and them. We have homeschool families that have got on social media, especially during COVID, and started going, well, I'm sure glad we don't have to deal with that. It's not what you want. So really be respectful of the opportunity that you get a homeschool, but don't make it an us and them. Try to bridge that and teach your kids that it is a privilege and what to say when you are out in the community. Early on, if I was at the grocery store before 3 o'clock, the kids would be asked like, shouldn't you be in school? And they'd look at me like, what do I say? And it only took once of that, of me going, I failed you because I didn't teach you what to say. And to empower your kids and say, like, we are done with school for today. We already did school and we're done, and we're actually, sometimes we're at the grocery store learning about like financing, how to shop and that kind of thing. Teaching your kids what to say when their basketball coach asks them, who's a math teacher, what'd you do in math today? Well, actually, I was doing pre-algebra. Yeah, I was doing fractions in pre-algebra. And they were in 7th grade, and the math teacher was like, oh, just wanted to make sure that they were doing school. They're just being curious. So I've learned the longer I homeschool not to shrink back, but to say we homeschool till our kids are 10th grade and then they do college their 11th and 12th grade year. And that usually shuts them up right away. I have lots of teachers in my family who had zero respect for me. My mother-in-law was a reading recovery teacher and did have discussion with me about how bad my spelling tests were and everything else, but she loves my kids now. And so time will tell. Usually your silence, it'll come around. So just encourage you.
I think that's a good way to end it. Thank you for being up there and answering the questions. And again, thank you all for being here. The Hepner's Legacy is going to be open for a little bit longer. And if you have any questions, again, you can corner one of those up there or someone else with a lanyard on it. So thanks.